Welcome, I'm Joshua De Lisle, the designer blacksmith, and today we're going to do this month's design, which is the ram sculpture. So I've printed off some of the templates which your guys will find in your download package, and I'm going to cut these out by hand. So what I've done is I've cut out the templates, which is just simply done like so, and you can see I've left enough of a border around so I can see that black line really clearly. And all I'm going to do now is glue the back of this, stick this onto the steel and cut around it. So step one, cutting out your steel patterns. All of your pieces cut now, and so to review some of the footage that you just saw, I'm going to give special attention to part A. Now you would have noticed that on part A there were two parts that I actually glued together, and that was because what I'm trying to do now on my new designs is to incorporate them just on a single sheet of A3 paper, so it means that when you print off there's less pieces to glue together. Say you can only print in A4, you're literally just two pieces of A4 that you glue together, and then you can cut out your designs from that. But what I've tried to do to indicate is, say this is part A, you can see it's labelled A there and A there on the other side, and then where they join together you can see there's like a hashed line either side. That indicates the side that you want to glue together, and then you can see I've done it straight on, glued it together on the black line itself, and then all you need to do for reference is just make sure the curves flow nicely into each other. Now, supplied with your package you do have a DWG file, and that's intended for you to send to a laser cutter or a plasma cutter company, and they will actually cut all the pieces out for you. You just have to meet the minimum charge. But part A on that file is a single piece, so you don't need to worry about splicing those two pieces together. When you get that, they will cut it out as a single piece. So some of you may have noticed that I didn't use the cutting jig table that I made in the previous video, and the simple reason because of that is because I was using such a big sheet of steel. I'm not able to move things around. But if you'd like to see what I mean by that video, there should be a link popping up right here now. There you go, or it'll be in the description below. Right, so now what I'm going to do is simply now remove all the paper off the steel and give it a nice clean up, making it ready for welding. And what I can do also is, if there are parts that didn't quite cut to the line closely, so this one for example, you can see I can just grind that back onto the line. So I've kept the design on it just for fettling and tidying up edges. But the very important thing is, when you do start to do this yourselves, is remember that you've got mirroring sides. So when you've got two part Bs like this, you want to flip one over, and then you want to put a mark on the side that you want that side to be, so you don't have any confusion when putting these pieces together. So I've got a paint pen here, paint marker, and so I'll just put part B on that side there, and then I'll remove this and I'll put B on this one here, and now I know I've got a right and a left going on. So now you've got all your parts cut and cleaned up, we can start the fun process and start welding it together, and hopefully end up with a shape very similar to this. Now, how I begin doing these sculptures is to start from the centre, so working on the central part and working outwards. So I think the best place for us to start today is doing part N and part D. So let's have a close look at part N, shall we? Now, as you can see on the top of the skull here, it's got a slight curve to it. And also, part O has to fit that V shape there. Now if you look, whilst it's flat, it doesn't fit at all. So actually making it curve like so will fit part O nicely. And that curve also will fit part D. So I'm going to begin by bending this with a pair of stiff tongs in my vise, which I think is the simplest way of bending this. So part N is nearly there, but as you can see, I'd like these curves here where the eye sockets kind of curve out to be a nice gradual slope over. So what I'm going to do is use this block of wood here to bend it. If you've got an anvil, you could use the bick of the anvil, but I think this block of wood is something that generally most people could get hold of, so I'm going to test the principle here. Now you can see here, this is the side that I was bending on the piece of wood there, and that's the side that just came out using the vise, and this is very flat and that's nice and curved, and that's what I'm looking for. So when part D goes on, like so, it's going to match roughly that curve there. Now part D has got to curve slightly as well, so you don't want it to match perfectly with this one, but if you take it halfway there, you've got half the work to do later. So that's what I'm trying to do. So when you've finished forming part N, what you should have is something looking very similar to this. And what you can see here is from the tip on that side, everything is curved very slightly, just like so. But from behind, everything is angled. So all the straight sides, they're all kept flat. So you can see that is totally flat across there, but all the curves have a slight arch in them. Now when part O marries into part N, with that angled curve, you can see they fit together nicely now, and that's what I will be welding together. But first of all, I want to weld part D on. So part D will go onto here like so, but you can see it doesn't marry perfectly because part D is flat. And what I want it to do is curve, and it will curve in that plane across there. So to curve part D, all I'm simply going to use is this piece of softwood. So this is an offcut of something, and what I'm going to do is flip the piece over, and using a hide mallet this one's got a copper end, and the reason being is it doesn't bruise the steel as much. So I'm just going to work on this inside curve here, and that should dish it slightly, dishing everything else. I'm just going to work across that plane on the opposite side. So there you can see I've curved the piece ever so slightly in all directions, This is a technique called planishing. You see it a lot in car bodywork. You could use a English wheel to do the same thing if you've got one. So I'm going to do the same with the opposite side. So whichever face I want to curve, I want to turn it over and then curve into it this way. Now what I'm going to be doing is just looking at the two pieces and just seeing if those two edges stay completely straight but touch in all planes, like so. So I want them to touch on all planes like that, but then I want part N to marry into that also, and as you can see it's nearly there already. Okay, I think we're at the stage now where we're ready to tack together. So what I have to help me is one of these. These are quite powerful welder's magnets that you can get off Amazon. And as before in all my videos, any tools that you see, I try to make a link in the description below. So if you're interested in getting hold of one, then you've got a place where you can get prices. And if you do click on any of those Amazon links, a percentage goes to myself, which helps run this channel. So strong magnet there, then I'm able to put these two plates onto it like so, and that holds everything together, so I'm free to add my weld and do a bit of tacking. So I'm going to put a tack right at the top in the apex there in the middle, just one for now. Then I'm going to add part N like so, and I'm going to start by welding just part D together first. So with that singular tack in the middle, I'm able to kind of move things about as I want them. Now if ever you've got a thing happening like this, where you've got it nice and tight down the bottom but things start to pry away at the top, all you've got to do is gradually work your way towards it. So as you're welding here, just put a bit of tension on and just keep adding tacks until that gap is closed up. Generally when you weld, things start to close up anyway. But it's always good to be in control of that by adding tacks. So things like that aren't marrying up properly, like here for example. You can see these pieces, the curves don't quite match, but it does back here. So what I'll do is add a tack here where it does fit nicely, and then I can just start bending these where they need to go. So for example, I'll start doing this area here by adding a tack just there. And now when I bend those two pieces together, I can get them to match like so. There we go. Part E on the maquette here, you can see part E curves almost 90 degrees from the tip of D here and curves around, and then it kind of double barrels and comes underneath. So I'm going to get that part basically to go on there like so. So I want this to curve around here. And so again, to do this we're going to use a humble piece of wood, and all I've done is I've cut a groove into this to give me something to bend into, and because this is soft wood it won't bruise the material that easily. So what I'm going to do is very simply go around from this point onwards. I want to radius a curve, and after that I'm going to be curving the metal from that flat point onwards until I marry into the other curve. Now to hit into the wood you might want to use something like this, which is called a cross peen hammer, or if you've just got a regular hammer you can simply use a rounded bar like so. And I will be doing that because I think most people will be doing the same. So I'm going to put my rounded bar on the curve like here, and I'm gradually working around, pivoting on this point. And when I can't go any further, I'm at the right point. So that's how you get that curve there. And obviously the more blows you do, the smoother that curve will be. I've done it in few blows and it's gone quite angular, but I can always planish over there. And then you can see I've still got a bit more work to do anyway before that curve matches properly. You can see now that that curve almost matches perfectly now. I'd say I've overbent it slightly just on the tip there. So to get that out, I could simply put it on the edge like so. There we go, that's flattened it. And that looks pretty good. So what I'll do is I'll do the same on the other side, making sure these two halves look like identical halves. Right, so now to bend the other way. So with this piece, I'm going to simply flip it over and I'm going to bend it straight across in the same direction. In fact, it's in line with this straight edge, but I'm going to go dug, 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 all the way across like so. No twisting it about this time. Starting to go quite nicely. Now, the only problem I've got with this is now when I look at it, that's now curving inwards, whilst it's actually meant to be parallel to fit the jaw piece which goes here. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of tweaking now, maybe even a little bit of twisting. I can put this in the vise and I might even twist it that way. In fact, I'm going to try that now. So the point of the eye is coming there. It's matching that curve, and then it's just going to peel away. And then this bottom piece here remains parallel, almost straight with the ridge here. Now I feel if I can just tack these pieces on, I can get the bottom of the mouthpiece to match. This will be welded on here like so. And then I'll get those two pieces to match each other perfectly. And so that's the next part done. And you can see it's already starting to look like very skullish. Now, just thing you just need to do is just keep checking the symmetry of everything. You can see mine's off ever so slightly. This is a bit twisty down here, so I might just correct that now with the pliers. Okay, so I think now we're ready for the jaw pieces, which is parts G. So if I bring a piece of part G here, like so. Now already I can see with mine, there's a little bit of manipulation that needs to happen down here. Now part G remains fairly flat. There's not much shaping to happen into part G. So all the shaping that I need to do has to happen onto part E. So I'm just going to take my block of wood, like so on the side, and just tap that down so that curve is flattened out slightly. So I'm at the point now where I think I'm ready to weld part G onto the side that I've been working, this side here. And the jaws remain absolutely 90 degrees parallel with the skull itself. And if we look on the back from shaping it, the part that I've worked, this part, is almost created quite a sharp angle but it goes into a curve in this plane here, and you can see the side that I haven't worked, it's still fairly curved. So I'm going to work this side now to get that matching, and then I can start tacking part G on. Let's now form the eye socket, shall we? Now what you want to do is get your parts F, and your part F will go into here like so. So I'm going to tack that on now. So now we're ready for part O, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clamp the ram's jaw down. So I've got a little clamp here. I'm clamping it just to the table. This is going to hold it steady whilst I hold this part here, and I can tack that on. So relatively simply, now that this is all set, I'm going to put a tack in the middle and then bring these corner edges to those of the corners on there. So now, quite simply, I'm going to curve this head part round. So I'm doing this just nice and gradually. I want a nice gradual curve going on. So the next piece that will dictate what that shape exactly is part K. Now part K is going to go and touch the tip of part I and the back of part N and O over here. So you can see there's something's got to happen in order to kind of compress this skull in a bit, in order that these parts might reach each other, and at the moment they're out by quite a fair margin. So I'm going to clamp his jaw down again, see if I can pull that down just using the tongs like so. Things are moving, which is what I like to see. When it's fully welded it won't move at all, but because it's tacked there is play. If I check with my part here, see, now we are pretty much there. That is looking rather good. And what I'm trying to create here is where I is. So we've got I, N and K. You're going to form a triangle on all of those flat surfaces. Perfect triangle. And that triangle there will fit your horn. Easier to form with thin gauge material, but harder to weld. Thick gauge material is easy to weld, harder to form. Alright, here we go. So I'm going to begin by tacking this and then marrying these two together and then getting the other side to fit accordingly. Okay, so now we've got part K to match with part O, and we've got this kind of a shape happening here. We've got our triangles ready and formed for the horns, and so now we've got this funny area here that we've got to fill in. And what that looks like is this part J. Part J goes in here like so, and then this tiny little part here does a little flick up. We're going to get part K to actually curve around and meet this. So what we're going to do is overcompensate that curve, and then we're going to start laying everything together. Just the final little bit now on the skull itself. I'm just going to weld across here and then pull this out a bit. In hindsight though, I probably would have paid more attention to how this back end is curving, because that got quite fiddly as it was getting tacked together. Everything's really stiffening up and getting really solid as the final parts go in. So yeah, my future ones that I make, I would try and pre-form those a bit more accurately before I go for it. Okay, so my part J is finally on. This side isn't too bad. I've got a little bit of excess material happening down here, and I think it's because I didn't quite shape these parts up here properly enough. I think if this curve was to curve up a lot more, I could have slid this back further, and therefore I wouldn't have any excess material happening here. But I kind of rushed it as well, which doesn't help. So what we're going to do now are these parts here. Part L, this piece, which goes in there like so, but it doesn't fit yet because we've got to bend it. So first thing I'm going to do is take this to the vise and kind of bend it in half, and then I'll start curving the rest of it from there. So right here is how part L attaches on, just like so. Now you can see on part G, that's quite a good fit, but on part E, there's a bit of a gap there that I need to sort out. But that's not a problem. I think if I tack that now to part G, I can then straighten up part E to accommodate it. So that is the skull all now assembled. So what I will do now is make the horns, but I'm going to make the horns separately, and I'm going to fully weld them separately, and then I'll weld the skull as a separate part, and then when I'm finished I'll then weld the horns onto it. I might even add a few little bits inside to take a light, so that when it's mounted on a wall it can actually shine lights and stuff out of it. So how I'm going to do the horns now is I'm going to actually tack them to my workbench. So this is how I'm going to begin doing my horns. So this is the left hand side, so that means that the B is at the back, the C is on the front. So here will be B. This is B here, this is C on this face, and this is A directly on top. And A will come and loop around like so, and these will form their own curves. So what I'm going to be doing is just pushing and pulling until all of these faces match up. So we're on the home stretch now, and I'm finally ready to weld this thing together properly. But before I do that, my thing that I want to do is to clean everything up, make sure it's free from grease and oils, all that kind of thing. I'm probably going to give it a light sand in certain areas, parts that are a bit sharp and didn't quite fit properly, or any high points on any tacks. But also I'm going to do some gap filling, like here for example, where my fit up was a bit sloppy. There you go, see, just in there. I'm going to turn that down to very low amps now and just fill that, give it a clean over, and then I'll do my final weld over the top and try and make it look as pretty as I can. So one of the tools I'm going to use to clean the steel up with is one of these, which is a polyamide disc. And it basically has like glass grit impregnated onto a plastic fibre. Now another common brand for this is Scotch-Brite. This is a cheaper version, and to me it works really, really well. I simply put this in the drill and give it a once over, almost using it like a grinder. And you can actually get grinding discs that are the same version. This is one that I've had for a while, and it's really good actually. It produces a really nice finish, but this is a bit too coarse for what I want to use it for. Wants to simply clean things up and make them look pretty. This is quite a soft one, but there'll be a link below if you want to know what that exactly is. So anyway, let's try and get some B-roll on the go, shall we? So I hope you had a great time watching this video. I certainly had great fun making this. And the next video I want to do is how I'm going to finish this. So in my head I'm thinking gun blowing and then a lacquer or something on top. But if you've got any preference, let me know in the comments. I'm up for ideas. The next welded pattern I want to do is going to be a big cat, I think. So either a tiger or a leopard I thought would work really nicely in this design style. But if you do have any suggestions on other sculpture or, you know, an animal or something, let me know, because I want to do a regular thing of this. I want to do more and more of these patterns, and if there is something that the majority of you would like most, I will do that. So yeah, start something down in the comments, vote on what you would like me to make next as far as a welded pattern goes. But what I am going to be doing shortly after this one is building my power hammer. I'm ready for that now, and I need it, and I really want to get forging stuff again. But I am really enjoying the welding, and I think I'm getting better. But with practice, if I do more of this, I certainly will get better. Happy forging a life worth living. See you in the next episode. Bye.